Yeah, is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the course. This is a course which is for 2 days, Understanding Social Enterprises, and it is being offered by Design Innovation Center, Delhi University, and that is from which you will get the certificate also. Now, this is a course which we will do over the course of 2 days, and we will have classes in the morning, 2 classes of 1 hour each in the morning, and then we will have a short break and 1 class post the lunch session. The timings which are being showed on the slide may vary a bit depending upon when we finish, and if there's some difficulty, some questions, I will address that also towards the end of the class. And at the end of 2 days, you have to submit a case study in which in about 500 words to 600 words, you need to write a short case study of a social enterprise which inspires you or which you think is doing valuable work. The course outline is like this. We have basically 6 major topics to cover. So we aim to cover 3 topics in the 3 lectures of 1 hour each in the 2 days. So total 6 topics will be covered. And the first topic would be introducing social innovation and social enterprise. I'll be talking about the meaning, role, and significance of social enterprises and social innovation in the current context. As you all know, that social enterprise is somewhat a relatively new concept as compared to private sector enterprises or public sector enterprises. And then we will try to understand why and what is the nuanced meaning of social enterprises and how it is so different from the non-governmental organizations, corporations, or business enterprises. The third topic that we need to cover today is about the theory of social change, how social value propositions can be created and identified, and what can be the social business opportunities. Tomorrow, we're going to cover the next 3 topics. That means we are going to connect social enterprises with corporate social responsibility, sustainable development goals, how they are interlinked with each other, because social enterprise by design not only wants to think about profitability, the aim of social enterprises is to basically bring about social solution to the society, to bring about changes in the society which can progressively elevate the conditions of the poor, backward, marginalized communities, or solve some of the very wicked, stubborn social problems like poverty, illiteracy, climate change, a need of infrastructure, housing, clothing. All these are the basic concerns. So if you know the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 social sustainable development goals, you will be able to sort of link it with how the concerns of SDGs are similar to that of social enterprises. And the corporate social responsibility also is another element which propels or which pleads to the corporates that you should not be purely thinking about profitability, but you should be also plowing back the profit to the society. So CSR, SDGs, and social enterprises have somewhat overlapping concerns, goals, and missions. So that is why we need to learn this thing. And the 5th topic would be, we will be looking into the profiles of successful social entrepreneurs, both from India and from abroad. So that this is a kind of a case study methodology we will enter into tomorrow. We will do some remarkable, successful, profitable social enterprises. I will talk about some of them. Some of them I will share the literature with you so that you can read in your free time. And the last but not the least, I will talk about the design thinking, solution designs, and startups, how design thinking can be a method in which you start thinking very systematically to establish a startup or to join a startup much later in your life if you are keen on that. So design thinking is a new method by which you systematically, step by step, arrive at more rational decisions, rational strategy and policy making, and that can help you in achieving your goals in a more focused manner. Now, the expected learning outcome, as you know, that is just a very short course. We will just be able to familiarize you with the concept of social enterprise and how they are creating solutions to tackle some of the rigid social economic problems. So this is a course which can be seen as a precursor to something which you want to do little later, pick up a course which is much lengthier, more deeper in its course content. There are many universities which are offering these courses, both under the regular teaching and also online courses which are available both within India and foreign universities are offering these courses. So that is up to you. If you get interested, you can look for larger course. In fact, there is masters in Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, which talks about social enterprises and which gives you degree of social enterprise. So I'm just giving you one or two random examples. Jindal has it, Ashoka has it. So there are many universities, both within India and abroad, who are focusing on training students in this new domain known as social enterprises. And the second major objective of the course would be that you learn how to develop innovative solution to address. The course is, of course, how do you understand social enterprises? But social enterprise and social entrepreneurship and social innovation are actually interlinked and interconnected to each other. So unless and until you become innovative in your solution providing, you actually cannot set up a new social enterprises which look into the problem with a new lens, new methodology, to solve that problem. So you need to be very innovative in your thinking, how to solve that problem. That is when you become an entrepreneur in a true sense of the term. And last but not the least is to empower you to perceive social entrepreneurship as a big force of social change. And this has been recognized globally now. People who are studying, researching, looking into the impact of social enterprises are actually believing in the merit of the concept of social enterprises, because they believe that this kind of modeling of new enterprises, new business model can help solve the problems of the 21st century. So this is a broad learning outcome in the 3 days which we aim to achieve. It's not to sort of make you fully prepared to be a social entrepreneur, is just to familiarize you with the concepts because of the time. Now, let me begin formally with the teaching itself. Now, the first slide which you're seeing is about innovation and entrepreneurship, or enterprise, we can say that. So these are the two key words around which we are going to talk about in next 2 days. What is innovation? We hear this word so often. Means today, if you look into policy framers, recommendations, you look into the business world, you are often talking about innovation, innovation, and innovation. And innovation and entrepreneurship, as I said, get interconnected and interlinked. But what is innovation? Innovation and entrepreneurship is, in a way, it is a purposeful task that needs to be organized in a systematic way. That means you are endeavoring, you are moving into a zone where some of the established practices or the way of doing things are not able to solve the problems of the society. So you have to start thinking in a new manner, in a fresh way. And that is when the innovation begins. When you question the status quo, when you question the conventional, traditional way of doing business in the society, or providing benefits to the people in the society, is when the the bulb of innovation gets lightened, in a sense. It is a new idea which strikes, and through that idea, the series of changes begin to happen. So innovation can be disruptive too. If the innovation is so big in its impact, it actually demolishes or ends the conventional way of doing the work. But often we have seen that innovation is more incremental. Like in 10 years' time, that systems get established, but innovation to set in always happens in a smaller scale. And then people pick up the idea, emulate it, make it better, and then the whole industry or the sector begins to shift. What can be termed as a paradigm shift happens when innovation and entrepreneurship gets accepted by larger audience, both within the country and even at the global level, at the international level. People begin to change. So we can say that in last 30 years, probably the information, communication technology, internet has actually changed all the sectors. And in the current times, we can say COVID has changed so many of our old practices. Of course, COVID is a crisis-driven response, but this crisis has also made us innovative and entrepreneurial in our thinking, that how do we live with the current challenge? And through the current challenges, through the difficulty, comes new ideas also, because we need to have the coping up abilities to deal with the situation. So a crisis can be a good trigger for innovation and entrepreneurship, but I'm not saying that innovation and entrepreneurship always happens when there is a big crisis. Innovation and entrepreneurship continues to happen, but in a much slower incremental pace all the times. But a global crisis can just accelerate the pace of innovation and entrepreneurship, because your response mechanism has been shortened. You have to quickly do the change because you did not anticipate something like this ever. Just like COVID, we did not anticipate that this would happen in the year 2020. So the response mechanism of global industry, health sector, education sector, tourism, travel, you look around any sector, they are in the knee-jerk way reacting to the changes. So entrepreneurs shift the economic resources from a lower end area to a higher end of productivity and higher yield. What is the need for this change? You can only justify innovation, or innovation only gets accepted because it has larger benefits than what was being provided by the old system. Then only you will be, that is the reason or a thrust for any kind of change to be accepted. The change has to be for the better. So entrepreneur by design aim to shift or try to use minimum resources to maximize the impact, to bring about higher yield and greater productivity. So not all business owners and entrepreneurs can be considered entrepreneurial, because you can continue to the same business which you've inherited from your parents, or you continue to do the business as you see around yourself. So not all businessmen can be considered entrepreneurial or innovator, because entrepreneurial has the special characteristics that he tries to change the system. He tries to transmute value into the new way, new thinking, and new ideas which were not known or not accepted previously. So entrepreneurship in economy, because we're going to talk about social enterprises, so we are going to focus more on economy aspect of entrepreneurship, but innovation is happening in all the fields. It happens in science, it happens in technology, it happens in economy, it happens in education, it happens in health sector. All new vaccines, new medicines are innovation. So innovation is not exclusively a domain of economy or of sciences, but we in our course are going to focus on entrepreneurship in economy. So economists often treat entrepreneurship as a big meta event, economic event that shapes or that just changes the old way of doing things. But as I said, entrepreneurship and innovation has that cultural and psychological underpinning also. Like in the student, when I teach my students in the class of 30, many of you understand the concepts which I would, but only few of them start thinking of doing research in that idea and thinking in a new way. So entrepreneurship requires a particular kind of psychological mindset. They are often said to be ahead of the curve. They are often said to be far-sighted. They are often said to be more, capable of taking risk. Most of us are risk averse. So if you are by nature psychologically risk averse, you would not be so much entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurship requires this ability to think differently, to challenge the system. So not everybody can challenge the system. So it requires an ecosystem, cultural, social, economic, political, policy framework, and also the psychological makeup of the individual provides what we call an ecosystem for entrepreneurship to happen, to flourish. And last century is called particularly the era of entrepreneurship. We have seen more innovation, more entrepreneurship in last 50 years than we saw in the previous generations, So we are in a way, the breakthroughs in the economic modeling, in cultural ideas, in political ideas, in sciences, in education, in health sector, in space technology, in nanotechnology, you name it, is rapidly changing. So the speed and the acceleration with which the change is happening is much more in last 50 years than it happened in over the 2 centuries prior to that. So there is this comparative element that we are living in the era of actually disruption and innovation. This is an era of innovation, entrepreneurship, and disruptions, thereby disruptions. So, and the whole idea, because America is a capitalist country, so the concept of deinstitutionalization came from American society, where they want the state interference in the economy to be very less. And when the state interference is less, we mean the bureaucratic hurdles are less. And thereby the entrepreneurial spirit of the society gets encouraged, and they have this ability to take more revolutionary ideas, take it to the ground, because they're not bounded so much by this kind of a legal architecture, which sort of stops you from taking big and bold decisions. Now, the practice of innovation is that innovation is a specific tool of entrepreneurship. As I said, entrepreneurship and innovation are connected to each other, and it is a means by which they exploit the change as an opportunity for different business or a different service. So if you look into this basic definition of practice of innovation, the key points are that they are entrepreneurs and innovators are able to exploit the change and convert the crisis into an opportunity. And they bring about different modeling of businesses and also providing new kind of services. In last 6 months, if you just think it deeply, you will see in last 6 months, so many changes have happened, and you in your personal lives have brought about changes and have adjusted to those changes. So this is a crisis, but many businesses, the whole Atmanirbhar program, which was started by Prime Minister Modi in last 4 months, the emphasis on indigenous technology, emphasis on indigenous goods and services, the startup culture which is being encouraged by the government is an example that the policymakers and the leadership in India is encouraging the community rather than taking goods from China, America, and other advanced economy. Can the Indians think in an innovative way? Can Indians come up with ideas which can build new startups and solve the problems of Indian society through indigenous technology itself? So you can connect this thing that if you have that knack or if you have that skill set, like courses like this will allow you to think. The traditional conventional courses of commerce or humanities or sciences doesn't allow you or acquaint you with this kind of a thinking. It's about ready-made material, ready-made courses. You learn basic information, and then you give exam. This course is not about giving exams. This course is about making you sort of think in a different manner. So it is kind of a push to all of you who are attending the class to, can you start thinking differently than relying exclusively on the ready-made, conventional, traditional ideas. So in today's time, in fact, I would go ahead and say that education itself has to be innovative and entrepreneurial, so that when you go out to the real world, when you go out as a job seekers, you are able to think differently. You are able to question the established way of thinking. So any change can happen when a new generation can come up with new ideas, which has higher productivity, higher relevance, higher possibility of social change, and higher social economic impact. And this is what, this course and many other courses, particularly the module which I'm going to teach about design thinking, will talk about it. Can you become that rational thinker of not accepting whatever has been given to you? So the practice of innovation is actually addressing that element, that innovation within you. All of you have it, but some of you keep it dormant. You become so passive in your thinking. You become so obedient to the established way that we often are not able to take that risk of thinking differently, setting up a new enterprise, new business idea. We don't get support from our family, from society, from the government. And that's another reason that many of you who are seeking jobs or will be seeking jobs in next 2 or 3 years often start thinking of, joining a government sector or a private sector. Very few of you actually are innovators and entrepreneurs. You don't think of yourself as job creators. You don't think of yourself as solution providers. You don't think that, can I set up a new enterprise myself? Because you see the hurdles, you see the difficulties coming from all sectors. So entrepreneurship and innovation is a tough terrain by its very nature. It's a difficult walk in that sense. And entrepreneurship needs to search purposefully for a source of innovation, the change and the symptoms that indicate opportunities for successful innovation to happen, and the need to know and actually apply the principles of innovation. So Peter Drucker gave this definition. Peter Drucker is considered to be, a big management thinker, and 2 of his key concerns were innovation and entrepreneurship, and his book is there on innovation and entrepreneurship. And this is what he gives, the classical definition of both entrepreneurship and innovation. So of course I encourage you to read a bit of it, what Peter Drucker says, because he's a guru of innovation and entrepreneurship. It'll be a good idea to read in your free time. And the purposeful innovation, innovation has to be for a larger purpose. Innovation, not just for the heck of it, not just for the disruption. Innovation has to create these resources. Innovation has to have this economic and social element to it. And as I said, the last century is considered the era of invention, because we call it the era of innovation or era of invention of inventions. As I said, that in the last 50 years or 60 years, much more innovation has happened than happened in previous 200 years or 300 years. So entrepreneurship must learn and must practice systematic thinking. The systems thinking and the design thinking, which I'm going to talk about, will help you enter into that, will train your mind to learn what is systematic innovation thinking, what is systematic innovative thinking. Will be, we will talk about that also in our course. So innovative opportunities, there are two ways of looking into it. Innovative opportunities are available in and around us all the time. It has been available to us in all the eras, but often we miss it. We need that kind of specific vision and observation power to understand that this is a problem that we are facing, and can we start thinking differently. We as society, both you and me, walk past the problem. We see children on the street begging, but very few of people would start thinking that can we help these street children in giving them some skills. You see the Delhi air getting polluted year after year. Every winter there is a problem, but very few, you bear with it, you just crib about it, you talk about it, but very few will think about this simple, innovative, indigenous solutions to how to make our environment more clean. I mean, odd even formula in Delhi, for example, was an innovative way thinking that can we reduce the traffic on the roads. But that is a short-term solution. I'm thinking about larger solution of stubble burning, for example, in Haryana and Punjab. Can we think of another way where this stubble can be disposed of and be converted into energy? So you require different mindset, which has to be encouraged. And this is a domain which young students like you have to actually take over. You have to be concerned about the environment. You have to be concerned about how the development should not be skewed to the benefit of the top 10% of the society, but rather everybody should benefit. So inclusivity in the development, making development both inclusive and sustainable should be the concern of everybody. But as young innovators and young students, probably you have the more capacity to go ahead and do some of these things because you have that age, and you are living in an era of innovation. So a lot of hope actually is on you. And I think the policymakers also believe that India has the huge capacity of being 5 trillion economy, being the fastest economy, growing economy. I mean, we don't have to consider the current era of COVID, but once we come out of COVID, there is a hope that we could be one of the fastest growing economy. And who are going to do these changes? The demographic dividend that we have has to be converted into skill set, into innovators and entrepreneurs. Then only this demographic becomes dividend. Otherwise it becomes a nightmare. This kind of so much of army of unemployed youth who want to get into this conventional jobs would create this kind of overburden into into services like UPSC or conventional engineering and doctors, which you think of as a young students. You actually cannot really be too hopeful about getting into that zone because the competition is getting too tough. So you are actually, pushed by the circumstances that we are in, that we have to have, or you have to have the ability to create job for your own self. So that kind of shift is so important. So innovation teaches you all these things. And as it is written, changes outside the industry, outside the enterprise, the demographic changes, the perceptions, the mood, the new technological developments, both scientific and non-scientific, can allow you to tap into this innovative opportunities. And we need to be vigilant, we need to be observant to understand that there is there is this lack of synchronization between the reality which we live in and what ought to be. What ought to be is that every child should be in the school. What ought to be is that every citizen should get the health facility. What ought to be is right to breathe clean air. But we know that it is not the reality. So innovation kicks in when you see these deficits or gaps around yourself, and somebody like you starts thinking of providing a solution rather than cursing the government or the system. That is what is an innovator. He will not just keep cribbing and crying about the system. He will think about the solution. And when I'm talking about observing these gaps in the system, we come to the institutions. We live in a system where there are formal institutions and informal institutions. And any kind of enterprise, whether it's a social enterprise or a business enterprise or a public sector enterprise, have to be crafted within the country. That means there is a context within which these enterprises work. So whether the system is socialist, welfarian, capitalist, will change the context of what kind of enterprises can come up. India, as you know, till about 1990s, we had this planned economy. We had this socialistic pattern of society. So the private sector was never so encouraged. We relied exclusively and excessively on the public sector enterprises. It's just in 1990s that we started to open our economy for the private sector, multinational corporations, and thereby we get linked to the whole process of liberalization, privatization, and globalization. So the institutions provide you a kind of a landscape within which enterprises exist. So the government rules and regulations play a very important role because they are the institutions, very significant institutions, which need to be sort of understood for what kind of social enterprises can be set up. Just to give you an example, in India, we have 2 million social enterprises. 2 million social enterprises, but another reality is, and a sad one, is that very few are successful social enterprises. In fact, many of the social enterprises which are set up close down within the first 2 years or 3 years of being set up. Why? The answer, I mean, it's a simplistic answer, but one of the prominent and significant and critical reason is that the Indian system doesn't provide the institutional support to these enterprises. So we can say that the ecosystem within which the social enterprises, any kind of enterprises can exist, is weak in India. So institutions basically are are included in terms of regulative, normative, cultural, cognitive elements that together get associated with activities and resources that provide stability and meaning to social life. So this definition basically means that we're talking about the whole architecture of institutions which regulate, provide rules, norms for the conduct of various activities within the society. And as I said, there are both formal and informal institutions. Formal institutions are the structures of codified and explicit rules and standards that shape the interaction among the social members or societal members. And the informal institutions are the enduring systems of shared meaning and collective understandings that while it may not be codified, it may not be written, it may not be documented into specific rules, regulations, and standards, reflect very significantly the socially constructed reality, what is around us. It defines the informal institutions actually shape the individuals much more than the formal institutions, because formal institutions are the structures of clear rules and regulations which are enforceable by the law of the land. Informal institutions is the whole cultural context. When I said that in India, as a student, I'm sure your parents would have never told you, oh, go and set up an NGO or go and set up a social enterprise. Many of your parents would want you to toe traditional professional lines, clear UPSC, become an engineer, become a doctor, become a professor, become a lawyer. So the informal environment or the ecosystem in India, by design, I would say, stops you from being entrepreneurial. And if I just juxtapose it or compare it with American society, because it is a hub of capitalism, it is a hub of innovation. That is where Peter Drucker is writing about that entrepreneurial spirit in last 50 years, gets propelled because the society celebrates these kind of innovation. Look at Apple, look at Amazon, look at this big e-commerce industries, Facebook. These are all result of innovations. These are result of these people getting correct environment to think something very, very different. And of course, China and India and various emerging economies, we copy that. We adopt those principles because it has created this huge disruption. Look at Uber, it's a disruption. So these disruptions are that how can you, the simple method of travel where every individual needs a car can be thought of, can we think of a carpool, or can we think about using an app to connect the taxi to the user? So this kind of innovative thinking, we as a society have not been at the cutting edge. We want to. It doesn't mean that Indians have spectacular mind and abilities, but what I'm hinting at is probably the institutional environment is missing in India to sort of tap into this kind of capability. So both the informal and the formal institution affect each other, and together they shape the power structure that underline the development of social enterprises over the time. So I'm moving a bit fast, but don't worry, I'll be repeating many of the things when I go deeper into the each elements which I have given as an introduction to you. So this is a macro flow. If you look at this slide, we're talking about the macro flow, that how innovational influences happen. I've talked about it in my previous slides when I was referring to it, but this is a kind of a flow chart which gets reflected that what are the macro institutional processes and the usual paths for social enterprises to emerge. So there has to be a cultural environment, there has to be global, regional, supply chains, social chains, there has to be previous history of social, economic, innovation, encouragement, and the type of the government, whether it's authoritarian regime, whether it's a democratic regime, whether it's a supportive regime, whether it's an unsupportive regime, also has influence in the environment. So even within the governments, the policies of the government, between the Labour government and the Conservative government in UK, between the Republican government and the Democratic government in USA, between the Indian BJP government and the Congress, the kind of entrepreneurial push or the policies which these two policies, political parties will pursue, will also vary. So it's not just the type of the government, but also the political party in power determines what kind of entrepreneurship will be encouraged in the society. And then the stages of the economic development. As I said, advanced countries have already reached that stage of innovation. They're already at that cutting edge. They're already advanced economy. Whereas, just take the example of India. We are still traditional economy in a sense that 60%, 50 to 60% of our population continues to rely on agriculture. So we are not a service industry. Our service sector and the manufacturing sector is much weaker. So we are an emerging economy. So it depends upon where, of course, the political system, the cultural system, and also the stages of the economic development determine where the influence for big innovation, big disruption, big entrepreneurial ideas are coming in. So all these factors combined together will determine the space for the social enterprises to emerge, to flourish, to scale themselves. So if these things are missing, if it's culturally detrimental, if the country is risk averse, if you have an authoritarian regime, if you have a regime which is more conventional, and you are a backward economy, the possibility of innovation and entrepreneurship and setting up of enterprises gets weaker and lesser. So to sum it up, we can say that institutional voids can be a huge impediment to a thriving economy which is thinking of innovation. You need, if there are institutional voids and gaps, the market will not be able to thrive, which is needed. And as I said, Peter Drucker said, sometimes, even if you are a capitalist system and you are an advanced economy, it is said it is very important to strengthen the non-profit sector or social sector or social enterprises, because they both create this stability in the society. A society which is economically progressing, but also resulting in high inequality, wage gaps, income gap between the rich and the poor, will not be a stable society. So to say that you can have economic progress is fine, but for a society to really be stable and to be on the trajectory of development for very long time, it is important that the benefits of economic growth, development, progress reaches to the last segment of the society, the most marginalized, the most backward, the most poor. Unless and until this trickle down mechanism of economic benefits does not happen, the chances of society being unstable, civil rights, conflicts, polarization, divisions, factions in the society would continue to rise. So it will become an unstable regime. So it is as important to progress economically, but even more important is that the benefits and the fruits of development reaches the society in somewhat equal manner. There cannot be an absolute equality. Absolute equality is not a concept which can be applied to in all the circumstances, but we believe that some kind of relative equality, nobody should be out of the loop of the benefits of economic progress, becomes an important element which needs to be looked into. And unless and until that happens, you don't create an equality. Look at the preamble of our constitution, for example. It doesn't say equality, economic, it talks about equality, economic, social, and political. It talks about justice, economic, social, and political. It talks about, liberty, economic, social, and political. So whenever you talk about progress of a society, it is important that we look into the cumulative, composition of equality rather than one-sided aspect of equality. It will not be sustainable. It will create social fissures, social cracks, and the differences will, sort of impact economic growth also ultimately. Okay, so an institutional void, basically, I've explained this thing just to sum it up, is the absence of, what is an institutional void? It is an absence of intermediaries between the buyers and the sellers in the given market. And that is what the business opportunity is. If there's a gap between what the need is, what the buyers want, and there is a short supply or a rest supply or the lack of supply, then the need for an intervention or a business idea exists. That means you can enter with an idea because there is a demand for goods or services, which is the market is not fulfilling at that time. The mask production during COVID, everybody needed that mask. Suddenly, there were so many people who were making masks and selling it. Even the big brands like Puma and Nike started creating. So what was it? It was an identification of a gap, that there's a demand for something. Look at PPP, ventilators, hospital beds. Hospitals were created over the period of 1 month. So what was happening? There was a sudden demand, spike in the demand, of course, due to the pandemic, of course, due to the crisis, but I'm just explaining you. And suddenly there were players in the market who wanted to tap in that opportunity and started creating or producing those things which were missing from the market at that time. So you need to, and my idea of, this whole, just to sum up what I have talked about in about an hour, because I'll take a break now, is that we started with the concept of why entrepreneurship and innovation is important. What is entrepreneurship? What is innovation? How they are interlinked to each other. Then we talked about that what are the cultural context, why social innovation or social enterprise can flourish in some countries and may not flourish in another country. So what are the prerequisites? What are the preconditions needed for social enterprises actually to flourish? And then we identified that institutions are very, very important. And what I mean by institution is both the formal institutions, which is mandated, legitimized institutions, government and government machinery, but also the informal institutions of cultural context, our behavior, our psychological makeup, all become very important in the whole ecosystem for social enterprises to be set up, to be succeeded, and also to scale. And we also talked about the concept of institutional voids, that is the gaps in the market. And if you are a keen observer, if you are a solution provider, or if you have an entrepreneurial psychological bent of mind, you will, instead of criticizing the systems that we have around ourselves, you will start thinking how the systems can be rectified, what can be done to elevate the conditions of the people, what can be done in all those SDG goals: clean water supply, electricity, literacy, providing homes, clothing, health facilities, education. So that is what is basically innovation. This is what innovation and entrepreneurship composes of. So I'll stop here. I'll see you in about, I'll see you at 11:50. I'm giving you 15 minutes break, sort of a coffee tea break, and then we meet again for another 1 hour of lecture. And then we'll have lunch break. So see you in an hour's time. I'm ending the session. I'll start again at 11:50. Is it okay with everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.